Hi, everyone. Hope you're doing really well. And as you can see, Andreas is back with us. Thanks so much for joining again, Andreas.
No worries. Thank you.
How have you been since we last spoke?
I've been fine, thanks. Yeah,
All right.
it's been a good week with yeah, normal started work recently, so yeah, normal
All right.
week you can say.
Glad to hear. And so, for those of you who are like, who's Andreas? Well, then check out Talking Insomnia number 67, where Andreas told us his pretty complete story of a journey from like a lot of struggles with not only insomnia but other things that are similar that we talked about, and to a place where like I think if I put it in, I don't want to put this in your words, but to me it's not, it feels like you're not really struggling much with things at all at this point. Or how would you describe life in general right now?
It's really good. I mean, it's really. I mean, I still do have anxiety, and that's the interesting part. Like, for example, I 2 nights ago I didn't sleep at all, but I usually I sleep fine, but I didn't sleep that night. But actually, I didn't care really, to be honest. Like I just okay, it was just an experience. Like yeah, I don't care anymore. It doesn't affect me. Also, like if I have other things in like life, like usual negative things that happens to you, that doesn't affect me in the same way. So it's a different. I have a different mindset about my own struggle now. So it's completely different. Yeah,
Yeah,
different
I'm
looking at
so
it.
glad to hear that, because I think it just sums it up. Like so many people that follow this YouTube channel, so many of my clients, the idea, very naturally, the idea is that I should get to a place where I don't have any anxiety and I sleep well every night. But that sets you up for, like, that goal sets you up for more struggle because you're trying to achieve something. But when you see that I can be anxious or I can have a sleepless night without it really bothering me, to me, that's really when you really become freer, and things become lighter that way. That's kind of my summary.
Absolutely, yeah.
Very well. So I had a couple of things I want to talk about, and so we kind of like uh, continuing where we left off last time. And one thing I just want to ask, because I know so many of the viewers are going to be curious about this, is okay. You shared last time that you were, you were in this place where you like um, maybe didn't sleep hardly at all for one night or even 2 nights, and then you slept a little bit, and then like it was like you were really struggling with sleep for a while, and then you come across my channel, you read Guy Meadows and many other things, and then how did the transition, like did it transition from like pretty quickly? You have this like epiphany type of thing where like it got better, or was it like a longer process where things kind of slowly get a little better, kind of a bumpy up and down path? Or what was the process like for you?
Yeah, I guess it was bump in a way, but kind of I in a way it was a bit of both. Like it was a bit bumpy, but at the same time it was kind of it got after the my CBTi how to say like
Experience.
experiment, yeah,
Yeah.
experiment and experience. uh, it took it kind of went um, it almost went to the in the right direction directly, but it took a long time, and it was very bumpy, but it was like from there it only got better. Like in the long, of course there was speed bumps, but it never went totally to the bottom again after that. So it was kind of like the CBTi kind of, for me, it kind of destroyed everything to the bottom. It kind of, everything went totally in the wrong direction there, and then kind of I had to build myself up again from that. So that was kind of the worst kind of experiment I did. And after that, I think, I mean, when I joined, I remember when I joined Sleep, the forum with you and other people in that forum, that it was very interesting to see how other people, how they were challenging themselves and everything. And like I was still on kind of this sleep restriction. I still had this idea that I had to. I remember one of the last conversation I had was about like, now I still have to hold on to this 3 hours or whatever. So that was kind of the last kind of, but what if I just try harder? And then after that, it was collapsed even more. And then I was thinking today, like, or this week, about how the pain is your best teacher in a way, like the suffering is your best teacher, because it's almost inevitable when the suffering becomes so deep and so horrible that you eventually just feel like now is time. There's no other way to go. There's no and I guess my previous experiences with my traumatic events in life and things like that was because those were events that were it was so tragic and so traumatic that my life was completely turned upside down. And I guess that I was somehow it maybe sounds a bit strange to say, but I didn't take my life too seriously anyway. In that, I mean, I remember one thing. You had an interview with a ex-military guy.
Yeah. From Israel. Yeah, what's his name? I forget his name.
Yeah. Anyway, he said something I remember that, and it came to my mind yesterday when I was thinking about these things, because he said like something like, don't take yourself too seriously. I remember he said that in your interview with him, and that can be very provoking in a way, but I think I interpret that as more as, don't take your personal narrative too seriously. Like, I mean, we are all in my belief, we are all part of something beautiful, and we have a consciousness which is beyond our story on this earth, which is beyond suffering, beyond everything. And I think that's the line that says, I think Einstein had a quote about that. He said, the value of a human life is how free we can be from our mind and body, something like that. And I really believe that, like, to hang on to the story and your question again, like, when I started to detach myself from it more and more, like that was what happened, because CBTi is almost like a medication. It's this kind of pill that you take, that you have to do this, and then you get a result, and the result is that you sleep again. Like that's the goal. I eventually just went further away from this narrative that I have to sleep again, and I had this capacity in me because of my events in life earlier. I knew how to let go of things, but I didn't understand that. I wish that someone had told me this like years ago when it started, like, because when you get used to all these kind of things that you think you can do something again to get rid of your insomnia, it's very addictive, and it's kind of becomes a new way of dealing with yourself, which is very toxic and very it's just so wrong in so many ways that I started to watch myself as more like an experiment in ways of like, how can I use this pain I have with insomnia as a kind of advantage, almost like a spiritual awakening, something that I can use to go beyond my fear and beyond my suffering. So kind of that became my goal, especially when I started to. I mean, I started with Guy Meadows course, and that was great in many ways, but also I had some, like, it was a lot of meditations and things like that, and it was really good, but it's easy to misinterpret that as the more you do, the better, kind of the more you do these meditations. Then, so I eventually kind of modified that as well a bit. Like I took the basic ideas, I think, more about it, and I kind of worked with my own kind of, if you want to call it meditations or what, it was more that I was observing myself a lot. I mean, I don't want to say all the time, but I mean, I was really, because I had so much suffering all the time, like in the days and in the nights, and everything I did was connected to this struggle all the time. And my wife used to say that when I was in the deep, when I was struggling a lot, it was like when you walked into a room with me, it was like meeting a black shadow. It was like meeting a dark. The energy was so black that it was kind of, you couldn't be in the same room as me. It was too. Yeah, it's really, that was how connected to I was to my own suffering, like, and everything you feel inside, you get. It's the law of attraction, right? Like everything you feel inside, you see out in the world. So, and the other way around, like you kind of, the thoughts are kind of always looking for something to kind of say that your thoughts are real. They are, this narrative that you have are real. It's true that you're suffering, and other people are not suffering like you do, so you suffer more than them, and that's your story. This kind of narrative plays out, and I think it's so important to break out from that, and it's not about insomnia itself. I had to work on my negative thinking. I don't want to say negative thinking, like I just going to think positive. It was more like to observe everything as an outside voice, like even my emotions. Like you can actually detach from your emotions as well. Like when you have an emotion and you kind of step out from it, you don't feel the pain of the emotion anymore, even though the emotion is there. It's strange. So the emotions is not us as well. It's kind of a layer of something. It's a part of our story, about our narrative again.
Yeah, the way I think of it is like that. You may have heard me say this, but that our thoughts and our emotions are basically the signals, like from our brain, that like when we're feeling angry, it's just a signal that tells us like now you should fight, or like when we're sad, it's like a signal that now you should not do anything, you should retreat. But that's it. They're just kind of, to me, like these signals that we can, like you said, that we can have them and experience them without being sort of entangled with them, and we can just observe them, as you said. And now there was something else I wanted to talk about, but let's stay on this one, for example, for a second, which is of course, when someone has trouble sleeping, insomnia sounds like this is a sleep issue, and the goal for me is to sleep more. I mean, it's very naturally that happens, right? But in reality, it's something much deeper than that. It is basically a type of fear, right? And what if anything, the goal is to sort of like not be afraid, and then when the fear is not there, then it doesn't really matter. Like you see that you can sleep little and still be fine. You can sleep a lot, and that's okay too. So I think that's a common confusion, and that leads into like directions that aren't that helpful. But that just came to my mind now. What are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's my. That's why I think, in general, I think insomnia should be treated as an anxiety thing. Like it's in a way, it's a pity that that there is something called insomnia in a way, because it's yeah. I mean, the less you know about it, in a way, it's good to know why it happens and everything. And that, with my panic attacks, for example, I used to suffer a lot with panic attacks. There was no one's telling me like you have to restrict the time you something like oh, when you get a panic attack, you have to go to another room, or you have to do something, or eat chocolate, or do something nice. It was that you can easily understand that can become an obsession and something really toxic. So that with my panic attacks, I mean, it's so much. I think there are more knowledge about that, in a way that most people know that panic attacks is connected to anxiety and the fight or flight mechanism. And that was what I was told as well. And I eventually, let's say, got rid of the panic attacks with help of just allowing them, and just every time it happened, I just noticed what happened and kind of stepped out from the experience and just accepted what happened. That was just became very natural and didn't last for too long. I think I had on and off for many years, but like last time I had it for a longer time. It was like 4 years ago, and I was maybe for a year or something. But it's insomnia is like you say. It's some people think it's about the sleep, and it couldn't be much further from the truth. The problem is, I think, that insomnia causes a lot of pain. I mean, that's the reality in it. Like, it's easier with, for example, I mean, that's generalizing, of course, but like with my panic attacks, to take a comparison, I remember I was waking up in the night a lot, and for example, I had to walk off stage when I was on stage as a singer a couple of times. But it didn't restrict my life in the way insomnia has done. Like, it didn't affect my I think it's about the level of pain that insomnia can cause is actually because I have suffered quite a lot of things connected to mental suffering, and I think insomnia it's very, very painful when you're in it. It's extremely painful. It's one of, I mean, it's, again, it's no point of comparison, but it's really painful because you get so entangled with it, because it's so connected to your life in general, right? Like, it's you can feel it in the body throughout the day if you haven't slept, for example. So you always walk around being kind of witness of this all the time. The body tells you all the time, like, don't remember that you didn't sleep tonight. Don't forget. I mean, sorry. Don't forget that you didn't sleep tonight. Don't forget that you have insomnia. Don't forget it. Like, it screams to you all the time. Like, it's difficult to run away from it in a way, and that should be actually a moment of realization. Like, when you have it all the time, like when you have this fear so much, like I did. I was fearing my nights, like in the daytime as well, a lot, and my suffering with my fatigue as well it was so draining. I mean, it was dreadful to go. I mean, I could go 3-4 nights without sleep. Like, it was so painful. Like, you can feel the itchiness in the skin, and the coordination was like I was dropping things all the time. But it was, I mean, that is also it's so much connected to the fear as well. Like you explained in another episode, like when you have been hunted from the grizzly bear the whole night, and then you're like, or for 2-3 days in a row, you're like, of course you're a nervous wreck. You're like, you have been hunted by wolves, like for I mean, it's it's not strange that you kind of have this coordination problems, and you have kind of all this, because there's so much fear in your body, and your amygdala is like, so it's sending out the signals like crazy all the time, and it's, of course, there's no it's difficult to handle that in many ways.
Yeah, exactly. And I think for anyone tuning in here, I think what we talked about there was like, it's not strange, exactly like you said, when there's been this total state of fear and you haven't slept much, that you have this, like, you're jittery, you're jumpy, you have twitches, and all kinds of what seems like really bizarre experiences that then make you think something's really wrong, but really can nothing in medical advice here, but so much can be explained by fear. And to something that I've thought about was that basically, I know Coach Michelle, she doesn't like the word phobia, so this is just a little shout out to you, Michelle. And so I understand why also. But that said, I think if insomnia, like you said, if it had been understood as a phobia, then a lot of like the teaching and the therapies that are out there actually start to make sense. But
Yes.
as it's understood today, it's kind of like it falls between cracks, and it's not really understood in the sort of traditional community. Anyway, I wanted to switch gears here a little bit and talk about, so you mentioned how you, I think it was in your message to me that you sent maybe like 3-4 weeks ago, you said that you had gotten into like, learning from like Eckhart Tolle and like Zen Buddhism and all these kind of things. Like, just tell us, like, when did that start happening, and, share some insights and things you learned from those sources.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I mean, it was mostly actually Eckhart Tolle. So I ran into also Zen Buddhism and read about that for a while, but I stopped at Eckhart Tolle, and I'm a bit obsessed about him actually. It's kind of my guru. If I have some spiritual guru, it's him. It's like I just love every word what comes out from his mouth. It's amazing. But I read his book. One of his books, The Power of Now, many years ago, and it was actually after my trauma in 2014. I think it was maybe a year after or something like that, and it provoked me a lot. I remember it provoked me, and it's not so strange that it provokes, because it's kind of yeah, he talks about how your mind ego, your self, your mind-made self is creating your story, and your suffering is basically because you're attached to a story. And of course that can be very provoking in a certain moment of your life when you're suffering so much from something. But connected to insomnia, so many years later now, after Guy Meadows' program, it was for a month, I think, and I mean, I still had some struggle, and I wasn't completely free. And I asked myself, like, well, okay, so I no longer fear the bed in many ways as I did. It's my Google Home talking now. Sorry. Oh. Sometimes it's just, if I say something, it just answers. It's strange. It's okay. It's like
what's going on?
So it's strange. It's talking. Okay, back to reality. So yeah, where was I?
You it had been. You see that it can be quite provoking, but then when you had this, the journey with insomnia, you explored Guy Meadows. Things were kind of getting better. You were somewhere there.
Exactly. So yeah, I felt that I needed to get deeper into myself, and because there are certain things that I really liked with ACT or ACT, that was connect. I mean, I liked almost everything about it. It was really good, but some things I think are a bit, and I don't. It's not about the ACT method itself, but it's in general just the thought of values in life. That was very important for me. It was one part of the method. Let's call it a method, like, and you talk about it as well. And then what's your value? What are your values in life? Like to be able to actually, I wrote down my values, like what's important for me, like not in, or it could be many things, like activities, and it could be relationships, and it could be many things, and kind of define what's important for me in my life. But I also think that there's a little bit of the danger in that, because especially when you suffer from, when you have an insomnia, which is quite I don't like the word severe, but like if you, because when I watched several videos about insomnia, people talking about this kind of the part of values and to especially go on with your day as it was normal and everything. It is good. It's a very good idea, and especially I think if you just struggle a little bit. I mean, if you kind of because I heard people say, "Oh, sorry, I left," but because it's just because with my own reaction to it, my own story. So, like when people say that oh they were sleeping like 3-4 hours a night, and there was so little for them, and there was like, but I just went on with my day like nothing happened, and it eventually they were breaking free from it, and I thought to myself, if I just got like 4 hours, that would be like whenever I got 4 hours, I was on drugs. I was like, not literally, but like I was I was just doing everything I haven't been doing in everything. I was like 4 hours was huge, in that time. And but when you go beyond, when you haven't slept for like 2 days or something like that, or you have, it goes to a certain point when you kind of, if you want to call it fatigue or reactivity to your anxiety or whatever you want to call it, when it reaches a certain point, I think you have to kind of change that understanding in a way, because in a way it can be a hindering for you as well, because that can set up that kind of connects the idea that it is what you do in life is the most important thing. Like because it's like if someone was losing their arm, and they were, for example, there's a tennis player who lose their arm, and like he has no way of playing tennis again. So how can he accept that situation in a new way? And it's not always the best route to like just go on with your everything, like everything will be normal, because it's not about that really. Because I've done that. I did that all the time actually throughout my insomnia. I almost never laid on the couch like on the day after. I had like, I stood up 7 o'clock every morning. Not, it didn't matter how little I slept. I did everything in the book, like, and it did not get better until I worked with my mental attitude in daytime as well. It's more about that. It's more like the mental attitude about what you do. If you lay in bed the whole day, it doesn't matter if it has been a good day for you. It doesn't matter if you kind of that's why it's difficult to talk about values in life. Like if it's so important for me to go and exercise or to write books, or I mean, it's great to do things in life. It's life is an interesting experience, but if everything is connected to what you do in life, it can become a kind of. Do you see what I mean? Like it can become a fault, which is kind of, because it's so important for you that it's kind of, it's, for me it was more important to kind of break away from my so taller again, like how to break free from your story, your narrative, and kind of just accept what is. And right now let's say I can't do the things I would like to do, to just try to have a good time anyway, like accept what is now. And it's, of course that it can be difficult, but that was where I felt I needed to get deeper in myself and kind of accept more the everything, like, if you sense what I mean.
Yeah. I'll just kind of like summarize it a little bit for somebody that tunes in here, and you can see if we understood each other correctly. But I think I completely understand, and it is that if you have a little bit of struggle, and you just decide to, I'm not like gonna let this bother me, I'm just gonna keep doing what I'm doing, then that can be real helpful, because you can see that, oh, I didn't sleep that much yesterday, and I still was able to like go to work and function fine. Oh, that's cool. Like I guess it's not super important for me to sleep much, and then there's pressure that goes down and you sleep better, and no problem really. That can be super helpful. But on the flip side, if you're kind of in this struggle, maybe it's a more intense struggle, like you said, and you're like, but I got it. I've been told that I still got to do everything like normal. I'm going to pretend it's normal. I'm going to keep pushing because I've got to show myself that I can do this. And even if it's something that inherently can be helpful, like I have to live my values today, because that's the only way I can like change things. Then you see it's become this another form of struggle again. And that's when, as I said, I think that you have to sort of go in a different direction, which is the introspective one, and just observe and be like, this is happening now. There's nothing to change this. And yeah, exactly. That it's as you can see, as we both kind of, it's hard to talk about it because it becomes this kind of fleeting way, the kind of fuzzy way, the just kind of observing way. But I hope that summarized it for people tuning in. And did it make sense to you, Andreas?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, like you say, it's difficult to talk about. It is.
Yeah, it's hard,
different.
yeah.
It can go very deep, and it's kind of when it becomes that deep, it's kind of gets more and more difficult to put it into words.
Exactly. Which is, by the way, I think I'm curious about to hear your take on this one, because I read The Power of Now. I actually didn't get through the whole book, but I liked it a lot. And at the same time, I mean, I liked it a lot, but my thinking as I was reading was that there are a lot of these kind of woo-woo terms, like, you know, you feel the life energy flowing back to you. And then when you read this, you can be like, does this even mean anything? Or is this, I'm not really sure. But part of that, I think, is that it is so difficult to express certain things that it can sound like a little out there. But again, I think his teaching is very, very sound. But yeah, that was just a little comment on what we talked about.
Yeah.
But yeah, anyway, so you discovered Eckhart Tolle kind of a second time, and this time it kind of really clicked, like it really made sense to you, I'm guessing.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And I started to kind of, yeah, I mean, I listened to him usually like when I had difficult thoughts. I kind of, because sometimes it can be good to have, like I did with your channel as well, like when I had a struggle, it's good to search for enlightenment in a way when you're in a struggle, and not to make yourself kind of feel necessary to feel calm, but to just, it can be good to be reminded of certain things. So that became a kind of my new it almost, I mean, it became a new interest of mine as well. So it kind of went hand in hand, like my new interest in this subjects became a benefit to my insomnia, and I guess the other way around as well. My insomnia became an anxiety became help for my kind of how I was perceiving reality and my new way of
yeah
perceive this life.
You know, that's I just want to comment on this one. I think it's really interesting and helpful, hopefully, that, you know, me and my wife, we you know, we're both very much into like talking about like mindfulness and the mind and how we relate to the world and all kinds of things. But one thing that we talked about is how like there are a lot of people out there now calling themselves like mindfulness coaches, and basically just present themselves as like, I can help you in whatever's going on with mindfulness. And the tricky part, I think many of them may be like very, very well-intended and very knowledgeable and all these things, but I think almost the problem is that there's no what I call entry point. Like it's like there's not, you sort of almost have to have or it cannot make things easier if you have this one particular struggle that it all relates to, and like that becomes the kind of focus of study and what you think about and relate to and things like that. So it's almost like you can use whatever you are going through, if it is panic attacks, OCD, insomnia, that becomes your entry point and a thing that you can use to kind of study yourself and learn. And does that make sense?
Yeah, it's amazing what you say. Like, it's because I was thinking about this right before we went on now. I was thinking about sometimes it can be, like you say, it can be a struggle you have with a certain illness, or what you want to call, want to call it. But I think it also, because I was thinking of actually have you heard of Wim Hof method?
No, what's that?
So Wim Hof is this I think he's Dutch. Yeah, Dutch guy who his teachings has become quite popular around the world nowadays. It's he's kind of an extreme he is doing ice bathing and kind of this breathing techniques, because it's about like laying in cold, really cold water, and I think he have a lot of world records in, you know, swimming under the ice and everything, everything like that. And he teaches this certain way of breathing, for example. And that made me think, like, people do this kind of things, and it gets them to a point where they kind of, because it's basically about accepting the pain again, right? Like, even if it's about cold bathing, or if it's about ice bathing, or if it's just like people who are walking on fire or doing some things that are like extreme sports or something, that can be also a way of dealing with because, like we're saying, like you say as well, like, pain teaches us so much when we can detach from our own suffering. It's kind of the ultimate goal in life, in my opinion, in a way. So I think you don't necessarily need to have a syndrome or something that you can put a label on it that way. I don't think so, but I think that can be an entry point, like you say. And it's usually a point where people, I remember Eckhart Tolle says in some episode, in a podcast, he talks about someone in the audience asked him about, like, how he can find peace in life. He's so anxious and everything. And he says something like, "Don't worry, it will come when you experience pain enough. It will come. Don't worry." Like, it's basically this. He talks about, like, how people, for example, go into relationships and they think that if they just meet their this perfect partner, they're going to be happy and they're going to be fulfilled and feel happy and everything. And then they kind of, I'm still not really happy. I love this person, but I still feel this emptiness on the inside, for example. So they're like, there must be something wrong with this partner, or this, and they break up, and then they find a new partner, thinking that it was just a wrong partner, like this. What eventually they found themselves in this deep hole when they're like, I'm so empty and I have tried everything in life. And this can be a narrative that plays out, but also, like, with the Wim Hof method, where he kind of, it's very interesting with that method, because he talks about this kind of hyperventilating to when you go into the water, he doesn't talk about, like, from what I have read, it might be that I'm not fully, I haven't read so much about it, but from what I can understand, it's more about kind of, for example, this kind of breathing where you're in water. And it's very interesting to think about that in relation to insomnia, for example, anxiety in general, or pain. Like, he goes with the feeling of the body's natural reaction, right? Like, he doesn't try to calm himself. He's like, just, oh, the body's panicking. Okay, I watch my body panicking. It's kind of I suspect that's the principle behind it, is to kind of go with the suffering and not fight against it, right? I think so. I'm not sure, but what are your thoughts on that? If I may
Yeah,
ask.
it kind of makes sense to me, in the sense that when we just automatically react to something that happens, like, in our bodies, then I think it adds kind of this extra layer of struggle, versus when we just see that it happens and we're like, okay, yeah, that's happening right now, and that's fine. Like, it just makes things easier. And also, like, I think, I think we're saying the same thing here, which is that if you have something very obvious in your life, like you're really having a lot of anxiety, for example, that is sort of almost like an obvious entry point for yourself. That's kind of the life is just telling you, like, this is something you can really learn about yourself, and it can be really helpful for you. But as you said, you don't quote unquote need like an obvious entry point. And with people that are walking on fire and submerging them in water and ice water and things like that, they kind of almost artificially creating some pain that they can then learn themselves from. So, but most of us don't need that. There's always something for me personally, it's been like actually a lot about it has been around this, like a YouTube channel, writing books. I know entrepreneurship is like seeing that, for example, it's so tempting to look at numbers and statistics when you have no control over it. And why would I worry about like how many people are going to view this YouTube video when I can't do anything about that, and things of that nature. So I think we all have entry points. But anyway, that was just a little comment on that one. And I think, if we'll maybe going towards kind of like summing things up and sharing something that can be really helpful, I want to ask, like, if you think about someone who has had all these, again, these are labels, but, just for the sake of our community here, like someone who says, yeah, like I've had a lot of those things, like people, I've been told I have OCD, panic attacks, anxiety, insomnia, I've had PTSD, I've gone through all these things. Like, I know it's super hard, but what would you say to that person if you try to say something that's helpful?
Yeah, it's I think first of all, it's not I mean, be patient about it. I think to be patient about your the way you work with yourself and the way you talk with how you use your inner voice with yourself. Like, don't be too hard on yourself. Like, it's so easy to, when you're not able to, for example, if you're not able to detach from the pain in the moment, like, don't be hard on yourself. And again, like, that can become a reactivity on the reactivity again, right? Like, then you build up a lot of guilt, and you kind of, the reaction gets even worse. But I think the most important, if I can sum it up, like, it's really about one thing that is really so important. And I think I mentioned the word so much in these two episodes with you, but like the word observe, like, observe yourself, because that ultimately makes you, if you manage to observe what happens within you, you are no longer identified with the experience. It might be that you're partly identified with it, like you still have the suffering, like you still have parts of the suffering, but if you're able to even say that, oh, I need to observe the situation now, I need to step out from this to work on that, that's already a sign that you're on the right way. And it's a work in progress. It doesn't happen overnight. It's because these things usually builds throughout years. I mean, of course, there are people who has just had a few weeks of struggle and they're fine. But I mean, when I listen to your people who has been in your podcast, and I mean, there are people who have been in this for like 15, 20 years and probably more than that as well. And I mean, these thoughts patterns and the body remembers so much from a long time of experiencing these negative emotions and thoughts. So of course it will take some time to break free from it, but every time you're able to watch yourself from another perspective, let's say, like, I use the word observe because that's the best word I can find in this respect. Like, if you're able, you can even be observing about your emotions, like I said before. I think that's the best advice I have, like, because then you're on the right path, but then you're already conscious about what's happening. If you're not able to observe, you're totally identified with it, and you have no chance of stepping out from it, because it's like if someone is just screaming and is totally in the situation, they have no control, and that's where usually maybe people get hurt or something, like they do things that they normally wouldn't do, right? Like they don't have the rational side. They're not in contact with their real consciousness. So I think that's the most important thing. Yeah.
No, I love it. It's so nice to hear. And I usually, I think I say the same thing, but I usually, like, to me, kind of my default wording becomes like awareness, like deploy awareness, be aware of what's happening, which is exactly the same thing as just observing what's happening. And just like you said, like the moment someone says like, I think I should try to be more observant, or I think I should be more aware, then you already have started that process. So that's super, super helpful. And I guess the final question for you, which I was just curious about this myself, which was like, do you have like, again, for everyone tuning in here, like these things can easily become efforts. So this is not about, like, I just want to say that right away. You know, whenever you do things with a goal, it becomes problematic. But that said, have you gotten into like some type of like formal like meditation? Do you meditate, or just you're just generally more mindful, or?
Yeah, actually, I don't do meditations in the kind of way that I sit still so much. Like I sit still with my eyes closed, but that can be a good thing. Of course, I've done that as well, but it can so easily turn into this kind of, I mean, meditation is literally to just be observing, to like you say, be aware of what's happening. It doesn't matter if you're sitting in a certain position or if you whatever you do. It's about being mindful in the moment. It's not. So I would say I meditate a lot, like maybe 75% of the time. I mean, it's maybe it's a bit too much. I don't know, but I'm very. I try to be very conscious about what's happening inside of me, because I need it, and I would not need that at another point in life, but right now I still have some struggle inside of me, and I still have to be a guardian of this kind of worry thoughts that comes up now and then. So it's I try to be mindful a lot throughout the day and throughout the night, and work on my reactivity a lot. Yeah,
Totally get it. Sounds very nice. Well, yes, thanks for coming on again, Andreas. And I will say that at some point in the future, we should do this open class when we have like just answer some questions together.
Sure. I also want to say a huge thanks for having your channel, and to everyone listening. Like I can't stress enough how much Daniel's approach has helped me, and it's gold. Like, watch the videos and learn, because he has so much valuable information that, yeah, it's amazing. Thank you so much, Daniel, for that.
Anytime.
Super glad to help me so immensely.
So nice to hear this. Super nice to hear this, Andreas. And yeah, we'll be in touch and talk soon, okay?
Sure. Bye.